coming on this freelance grant writing live Q&A panel. I'm so excited about it. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm excited about being here with you guys.
Yeah, this is going to be so much fun.
Ditto.
Hey, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce you guys in just a few minutes. We have quite a few people coming on. This is a very large group for all of you who are joining us today, and we're really excited that you're on the call with us today. So if you could please make sure that your microphone is muted and your video is turned off so we have the best internet connection, and we will definitely open up to questions at the end of the call. But throughout the call, if you have questions that come up, feel free to put them in the chat box. That's where we can grab them at the end, and then we can share with everybody. So I'm really excited about this. We just have a few more people coming in. We have almost 100 people on this call today that have registered, you guys. So thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, and I'm just gonna go ahead and, so those are the ground rules today. But once again, you can always contact me at holly@grantwritingandfunding.com if you have any questions. We have some more people going on the call. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have quite a few people coming in. All right, so here I go. I get to introduce the panelists today. I'm super excited about that because I know both of them. I've been able to create a relationship with both of you, amazing, amazing people. So when I had questions from grant writing and funding, different people that listen to the podcast, and they were asking, hey, Holly, during this COVID-19, like, what is happening? I'm trying to, get set up as a freelancer. Should I charge right now? Should I be free? Should I even do this right now? I had so many questions coming in that I thought, who better to also bring into this conversation but Rodney Walker and Dr. Beverly Browning, because you both have been doing this for so long as well, and you have different perspectives, and you're both like two of the most positive, amazing people I've ever met. So I'm super excited about that. So I said, you guys will be able to lend a lot of this conversation, because I know as an entrepreneur right now, there's a lot of, I'm not going to make all of the best decisions right now. Potentially, I'm going to look back and say, oops, I kind of screwed up on that. I thought that was going to be a good thing and it didn't work out, right? We're kind of learning as we go through some of this, as a business owner, as a community leader. Like, there's different things that we're having to make hard decisions and quick decisions on right now, and we don't have all the information necessarily. So I was like, I need to call other people into this conversation before I just give out my own advice, because I know that more minds to the group means a better understanding of the situation, especially as it's rolling out. So thank you. So that's why I put this together for those of you who are on the call today, and and to answer your questions, right, to get more minds, like I said, on that. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce my two panelists today. We have Dr. Beverly Browning. Can you just give a wave, Dr. B? So go ahead and you guys can go to speaker view so you can see my view, and then you can see our panelists. And Dr. Browning is the author of 43 grants-related publications, including 6 editions, and I think you're working on the 7th one right now, right?
No, I'm writing a new course.
Oh, a new course. Okay, so 6 editions though, still over 100 million. Ooh, that'd be good. Over 1 million books sold of grant writing for dummies. And she sent me one of the copies here. I love it. It's a fantastic book. Dr. Browning is founder and director of the Grant Writing Training Foundation, and she is CEO for Bev Browning LLC. Browning has assisted clients and workshops participants throughout the United States in receiving awards of more than $500 million. So that is fantastic. So welcome to the call, Dr. B. Awesome.
Thanks.
And then, of course, my other panelist too is Rodney Walker, and he is president of Grant Central USA, a grant development training firm that is internationally known for helping organizations land 6-figure and 7-figure grants and shave months off the time it takes for them to get funded. He oversees an elite network of approved licensees who deliver today's leading training in grant development systems. He also has 1 million courses, just like Dr. B does, on how to actually be successful in grant writing and in freelance, as a freelancer. So thank you. Welcome to the call.
Thank you so very much, Holly, for having me. Glad to be with a couple of rock stars, and in addition to all the other wonderful students out there. I'm a big fan of both of your works, and thank you for putting this together. I'm also a big fan and was like a student. Bev Browning mentored me from afar with that grant writing for Dummies book. So I'm to be here with both of you. I can't say enough about both of you because you guys have both been just trailblazers, and I love it. Holly, you been a new trailblazer around here, pulling together things like this. So thank you, and then Bev for that foundation that you laid for so many of us. I mean, I just want to give you kudos for all that you've done. I've taken your pieces and been able to take it and grow and learn from it. So thanks. It's an honor to be with both of you today.
And it's an honor to be here again with Holly and to finally see you in person, Rodney.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's fantastic. I want to kind of lend to that too. I think Dr. Bev is like the sage of grant writing. She really is. Like,
thanks.
Yes, I mean, we talked about that before on the podcast that we did together, and I said, I remember in 2007 I got your advanced grant writing course on Ed2Go, and it was just so it was so surreal when I reached out to you and I was like, will you be on my podcast? And you were like, responded to me right away and got back to me, and then you were on it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm having like this weird out-of-body experience.
I'm just a little old lady.
I mean, you've been doing this from the ground up, you know what I mean? So, and then I wanted to add this too. This is kind of cool. So I work at the University of Guam as well as an instructor, and we were looking at doing different certifications and certificates and kind of non-degree programs. And I said, what do you guys utilize? And they said, well, here we have this book we sometimes refer out when we don't have the courses in-house. And they were your courses, some of your courses on Ed2Go. And I said, I know that lady.
That's great. I'm glad it's there.
Yeah, all the way at the University of Guam. So I was
wow. That's nice.
So thank you both once again. And then, of course, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Holly Rustick, founder of Grant Writing and Funding. I host the podcast Grant Writing and Funding. I do freelance grant writing coaching, and I also do grant writing coaching and nonprofit strategic planning. So thank you so much to come on the show today. We have quite a few people on the show, and we're just going to get started. So like I said, for those of you who might have just come on now, just go ahead and you are automatically muted until the end of the show. We will be taking questions, and then just please thank you all for just turning off your camera so we have better internet connection so you can hear what the panelists are saying today. So we're just going to go ahead. I have some questions that I've curated just through some of it from the different people that have asked me questions. So I've put them here, but we'll also have quite a bit of time for you guys to ask your personal questions, but we will save those to the end. But once again, if you do have a question as we're talking during the panel, please put it in the chat box so you don't forget what that is, and we'll circle back to that at a later time. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and we're just going to do this panel style. So I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to give both Rodney and Dr. B time to actually respond to it, and then I'll weigh in on some of it as well. But yeah, let's go ahead and start, and we'll be starting with, I'll direct this question first to Dr. Beverly Browning, and just, to go into some background, just to kind of paint the picture. I read your bio, but if you could just tell us, describe your business and how and why you got started.
Well, first I got started as vice president of the Volunteer Center, an agency with the United Way in Flint, Michigan. That's where I'm from originally. And we lost our suicide hotline program. The money ran out. When we couldn't pay the director, we couldn't pay our expenses with the community mental health division. So I went to a board meeting not knowing this, and the executive director walked in, and she looked really forlorn and sort of just wilted in fear and anger. And I said, how can I help? What's wrong? And she said, we need a grant. We need a grant for our suicide hotline prevention program. And I said, so what can I do to get you one? And she said, you're vice president of my board. You're the youngest vice president we've ever had. You don't know how to go out and find money for this organization? And it's like, no. So when the other board members arrived, they were all older and more experienced than me, and they also sat on more boards. This was my first board position ever. And I asked them if they knew how to get grant money to help us keep that line open. And they all said no, they did not. So that's how I got started, by going to the library, by asking the reference librarian if I could get a book to check out. There were no books. That was the first seed that was planted, no books on the shelf. And this was decades ago. And then I asked if there was anything like a directory of foundations, and there wasn't, but she had a regular school notebook with 3 foundations written in longhand and information about them, and that was the start of it. So that's when I started writing. My business, I have 2 businesses actually. I have a 501c3 private operating foundation, the Grant Writing Training Foundation, and that's where I do my training, and that's where intellectual properties populate the revenue. And then I have an LLC that operates as an S Corp, and that's where I actually take on the actual I have to work now types of contracts. Training is not work, everything else is.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's really interesting. And especially like, I imagine when that, you know, when the executive director is like, you don't know how to write grants, this is, and you're probably like, oh my gosh. But then even asking, like you said, experienced grant writers that were older, had served on, you know, more, or experienced board members who had served on more boards, and they said they didn't know how to do it either. So that was clearly, like you said, an opportunity for you then to do something a little bit different and to bring in funding a little differently. So that's really, really good. And I like too that you saw a need when you said there's no book. So right away, so that planted a seed, and now you're an author, you know what I mean? So, and you've been able to contribute so much to the knowledge of grant writing. So we definitely appreciate you. Yeah,
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Rodney, what about you? So tell us a little bit why you got started and a little bit about your business that you have.
Absolutely, thank you. I actually started in this whole grant thing as a director for a nonprofit organization back in Austin, Texas, where I used to reside. And we had a contracted grant writer. She would come around to all the directors, scribble some notes on some paper, take the information back, and in about 2-3 months, we were getting funded. And I was blown away with that. It's like, wow, she took my words and wrote down something, and somebody gave us money. I'm like, can you show me how to do that? And she was like, get back, wait for me trying to take my gig around here. You better get back and learn on your own. And so long story short, I dove into the process, and the first grant proposal I wrote was for a grant for $25,000 to the Hall Foundation back in Austin, Texas. Long story short, I fell flat on my face. It was a dud, did not get funded. Program officer called me in and said, hey, she wrote at the very end of that letter, if you'd like to come to discuss the problems with your proposal, be happy to do that. And I took up on that offer, one of the best things I could have done. Fast forwarding, I eventually moved out to California, where I now reside, and decided, hey, I need to learn this thing. It was some years that still passed by, and I still didn't know what I was doing. And this time I decided to do a smarter way, so I enrolled into some educational programs, and eventually that was what led me toward the book, because one of my professors turned me on to that book, Grant Writing for Dummies, and some others, and I started doing it a much smarter way, got funded, and then eventually my professor said, hey, you really have a knack for this. Have you ever thought about doing this as a career? At the time, flew right up my head. I wasn't thinking about doing it as a career. I was simply trying to get funded. But after I thought about it some more, I decided to share the bit of knowledge that I had. I was fairly new to it, but I figured, like the saying says, in the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed person is king. So I took that little Popeye approach and started sharing the information I had. And that eventually brought some clients my way. And one big pivotal move that kind of got me doing what I'm doing right now is I started sharing this information with about 10 people. And one lady was so moved by the information, she asked me to come and do it at her graduate school. I'm thinking that it's going to be another 10 people at that location as well. Lo and behold, the school sends the information to like all the alumni at a 30-mile radius. It ended up being like 78 some odd people there. And I wasn't charging for the course. I was just saying, hey, great, here's a free book my professor has let me teach and sell for like $20. So now you do the math, 20 times like 78, I'm feeling like, hey, it's a good day to be teaching people about grants around here.
Yeah.
And that led me on the path of doing some of what I'm doing right now. My business now focuses on empowering people to learn how to do grant writing. Some are individuals, others are organizations. And then also I have a number of people that partner with me and we do training. So I license people to do training in different areas and they take some of the systems. And this is like one of a few businesses that I have. I have other businesses that do other things to create other revenue streams as well. But my big main thing is the whole grant thing.
Thank you so much. I love that too. I mean, that's such a, I tell people that a lot of times, especially new freelancers that are coming to the table and they say, oh, but I don't know, they get the imposter syndrome thing going. And I say, but if you're a couple of steps ahead of somebody, sometimes that's better than somebody else who's been in the business for 15 or 20 years. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you just need someone a couple of steps ahead of you and that can be very powerful. So, because, I'm not going to remember all those things that I definitely went through them. That's not what I'm going to be talking about.
And the beautiful thing is that we have so many different personalities. Different people will gravitate to different people. And so it's like there's room for you just to come out and carve out your own special niche.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I had both of you on the call. Some people could say we're all competitors. And I say, well, we actually all can work together very well. And there is so much. And, my thing right now too is just getting the information out to the people because we need more freelance grant writers out there. Nonprofits need you. They need lots of us out there to be helping them right now. And like you said, Rodney, they gravitate towards different personalities, so it's just really interesting. What I can bring to the table might be different than what you can bring to the table as far as like how we discuss it. And, like even look at how many different personal development coaches there are out there, and people think, oh, it's saturated. Well, not really, because you're going to, resonate with somebody different. You're going to resonate with that personality or that branding or whatever. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just a little bit about my story. So I got started in grant writing actually back in the Asian tsunami. So if you guys remember way back then when that happened in the world, it was awful. And I was actually pulled to do some community development about 6 months after the tsunami in Indonesia. And what I realized working for an NGO, a non-government organization, was that we were kind of, it was developed to come in and solve a problem. They never did a needs assessment with the community. They never went out and asked them what they needed. So of course the program fell through, right? So that's one huge lesson. But while I was there, it was like, what can work? And then, we started making partnerships and friendships really in the community with the people. I was learning the language even and going out there and talking to people saying, what do you need? And when I realized, they said, I just need, $500 US to restart my water kiosk. Micro grants. They really were looking for that. But they said, I don't know how to connect with the UN organizations that are here driving around their armored cars and their guns and not coming out and talking to the community. But you're here, you know what I mean? So I was like, oh, I can be like a liaison to help you get money, you know what I mean? And speak the language that I know that they need to hear that you might not necessarily know how to write, right? So how to convey that message. So I just started doing it then. And I thought, this is fun. I love getting money for people that need it. Yeah. And just and that's how I've always seen myself, as a liaison between the money and the nonprofit. So I started working around the world in different places since 2005. And then I came to Guam in 2011 and working for nonprofits and getting, nonprofits around the world, different types of grant monies. And then in 2014, I said, I want to help even more people instead of working directly for NGOs, like as a development coordinator, as a writer. And I started my own business so I could help more people and also help more people get trained, because I know even on Guam, there's thousands of NGOs, there's thousands of nonprofits, right? I can't serve them all, right? So what can I do? And that was one of the reasons too, I wrote a book, right? So I can give them a book because maybe they can't, they can't pay for my services, right? But they can afford $20 to buy a book and to, go through that. So yeah, so since then my main thing is getting the information out there, starting the podcast, really being able to give just bits of information, actionable items to help people really grow and understand the oftentimes complicated lingo of grants, to break it down into simple language so more people can get funding and understand the process. Yeah, so that's kind of my crazy journey. But yeah, and all of you are going to have your own story. So just speaking to you guys out there that are on the show right now, you guys all have your own story and how you got into it. And that is a beautiful story. That's what makes you all passionate people. And we're super excited to have you on the call because of that. So yeah, hopefully we can hear some of your stories too. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead again and pivot the question. This time I'm going to start with Rodney. As a freelancer that has been working online for quite some time, you've had online courses and everything, you understand the digital world. Like, you have an amazing YouTube channel. So for those of you who don't know it, check out his YouTube channel. You're on LinkedIn a lot as well. How has your business been impacted by COVID-19?
Great question. My business is actually, truthfully, gone up during this time. And it's interesting, about a number of years ago, I would say about 3 years ago, before my mom passed away, my business was really centered on having a team of individuals, and we would literally go and do trainings from Alaska to Hawaii to New York, Florida, California, Texas, all over. And that was the structure that I had business-wise. And during the passing of my mother, I decided, I got tired of getting on planes. Sometimes I was going on planes, other time I was sending out consultants to those different areas. And I decided to re-engineer my business to make the business more where I saw things going toward the future. And a part of that was bringing that and setting up a real strong base so that the business would be virtual. And so instead of boarding the plane, I was boarding an elevator to go downstairs to the conference room. And with that re-engineering, I had no clue about what would happen right now. But with it being set the way it is now, my business was really prepared to be able to deal with the impact of being online, because I'd been online literally for the last 3+ years or so, even though I was on before that time, but really the bulk of the business was centered now with it being online versus having a physical presence. So the impact for my business personally I haven't felt it. Actually, I've gotten a boost because I believe more people now are at a place where they're at home and there's more time focused online. So it's actually had a strange beneficial impact.
Right, absolutely. And I've seen that as well. Just because there's a lot more grants out there right now too, there's a lot of funding getting rolled out. So people are looking, how can we find grant writers? So having an established online presence, I can imagine people are finding you now, right? So all of a sudden you'll see that spike, which is, and that's another reason too. I know I wanted a lot of you guys to come on the call today because a lot of you are new and you're saying, oh my gosh, is my business going to go under now? Actually, for freelance grant writers, I believe your businesses will be going up right now. Dr. B, did you want to lend to some of that?
Yeah.
You've been impacted. I know you've been doing a lot online as well, so you could just kind of.
Yeah, I was impacted actually before the pandemic. I was a subcontractor for another grant writing consultant, and found out with about, I guess this was back in November, beginning November, that I was going to be taking a hit of losing $3,000 a month. And so I started to plan ahead in November. At the time, I was devastated, and it's like, okay, I have to really be more strategic, and what are the necessary expenses and what are the expenses that can go. So I started preparing then, and at the time I had no idea that we were going to be in a pandemic. So that early on, sort of, oh my goodness, what do I do? Because I need to have that revenue replaced. And obviously Thanksgiving and Christmas is not the time to bring in a client that's going to pay that amount or more every month. So by being ready, by the time the first of the year came, I just made a solid decision to change the way I do my business. And I don't want to write grant applications every week or every day. I want to be more creative. I want to think outside the box. I've always had a lot of side services that I've provided. So I just decided to throw out all my rates. And when I got a telephone call from anyone saying, you know, we'd like to work with you, but we don't think we can afford you, I started saying on January 2nd, what can you afford? And I'll tell you what I'm able to do for that. So I'm doing some virtual board training, which is great. I don't have to leave home or, you know, drive across Phoenix to do that. I also started in actually 3 weeks ago to write a new course, which will take me through the end of October with deferred revenues, which are good. And I've just really cut back and chilled out. And every training that I had booked, because I had 18 trainings booked to go out and do in person, I've been able to convert those to online. So it's really made a big difference. And while I have less revenue coming in, I find that I'm busier for some reason because I end up on, you know, 3 to 5 Zoom calls a day with people that just want to meet, and then they become referrals later, or they give me a referral. So I'm doing good. I guess I'm really blessed to say I'm doing good. I'm not wealthy, and that's not the goal. The goal is just to pay the bills and to have fun along the way.
I love that. I love that. And I like that. So just a quick question on your online. So you transferred from physical board trainings, right, to online trainings. Did you change the amount of money then because it's online?
Oh, absolutely. It went down to about 1/4, 20 to 25% of my in-person appearance fees, because Zoom is already a standard bill, as is free conference call. I mean, the technology is in place to do everything from this chair, and I enjoy that very much. So yes, I lowered my rates substantially. I just did a 3-hour one yesterday morning for a client that I've had for 20 years now, a municipal client. And going out in person would have probably been close to $2,000. But sitting here in my chair with everything that I need right by me and having control of that for 3 hours, you know, it was 1/3 of that price.
Right. And that's one of the reasons I was going to kind of add to that too is, you know, everyone, your time is valuable, right? Like your time sitting in that chair is valuable for all the experience and all the knowledge that you bring forward. It's not just a time, right? The 1 hour charge per se, you bring in decades of experience into that 1 hour, but at the same time, you've reduced your expenses to travel, right? So that's when you can kind of say, how can I reduce my cost to my consumer if that's going to help them, right? So,
Yes.
And, you know, we have to go with our gut feeling, what feels good at this time as well. I think that's important to know too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's so pivoting businesses. I think that's really helpful to those of you who are out there. Sometimes you're not going to have to pivot that much, and sometimes you may have to pivot quite a bit, but it's being creative in what you do. Just personally, I have more of a hybrid course that I have. I converted it completely as a DIY because I thought, you know, give more flexibility to people. And then I've cut all my master courses by 50% until April 30. So I figured that was a way I could give back. So I didn't do a huge amount. But the other thing, of course, is I've really been thinking of how can I bring value and knowledge. So like doing these types of things, you know, not necessarily what am I selling, but what value am I bringing to the table as far as what can I offer people out there? So these types of events, doing my podcast and sharing different types of funding that's out there that people can tap into. So yeah, that's kind of how I've pivoted during this time. And I think what's important too is a lot of us, we have been savvy with Zoom. We've been using it. So it's not that huge learning curve. So we were able to kind of jump in and take off a lot quicker. So that's also important as an entrepreneur to always be, you know what I mean? Like you said, thinking and planning. So I like that you said that, Dr. B, about pulled back before this even happened, and you had to analyze your plans, so can you just talk about that too? Because I think that's really important, and that's what we've been really stressing out with any kind of business is it's not exactly changing your mission with nonprofits right now. So the nonprofits that you work with, it's not a change in mission necessarily, but it's a change in operations. And you had to do that internally, like to say strategically, how am I going to do this? So can you kind of talk about that change in operations that might be helpful for others at this point in time?
Yes, I called my accountant. I've always had a financial person as part of my expenses, but the one that I work with now here in the Phoenix area, she's the most engaged financial consultant I've ever had. I mean, we talk every day, and it's like, okay, this is what my revenue is going to be next month. These are the expenses. What do you see that can be cut? How can I shift things around? I don't just use my own mind, because I find out that I'm hard-headed. And if I get an idea and I'm going to do something, I don't care what the cost is, I'm going to do it. Well, I have this check and balance person in my life now. So that really, really helps. But I am also, taking care of a household, and I have been the sole person taking care of a household for the last 20 years. So with that, I'm always looking ahead. I plan on my Excel spreadsheet where I have my personal budget, my corporate budget, and my foundation budget. And I know what's coming in. And so when I get a phone call and somebody says, I know that you really are into grants and board training and everything else, but can you do a remote training for us on remote communications and team building? And, I've taught so many different courses over the years besides grant writing, a lot of business related courses for universities. So it's like, sure. And the minute I get off the phone from making the deal and what I'm going to charge, I am on the internet and in my old Dropbox files looking to see what do I have already that's ready to go that can be updated, and what do I need to learn about remote communications in the land of Zoom and video that I can put into this curriculum. So we can turn ourselves into anything we want to be. It's our mindset. There isn't anything that we can't do. We can't be afraid of venturing into new territories and new topics. If you want to survive as a freelancer, you have to do metamorphic changes, not just once a year. You have to do them almost every week. 2 weeks ago, I became ordained to do Zoom weddings.
Wow.
It is
streams.
It is so much fun. The bride and groom get center front. I stay down as the officiator, and they can have up to 95 family members and friends that can all see them on the video, and they get the recording. And all I do is sit here and talk for 15 minutes to do the ceremony. And it brings in like $500 for 15 minutes. You can't beat that.
Wow.
That's a happy time, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love what you're saying about that's metaphoric change every single week. It's like you're constantly, it's different. You're manifesting in different ways. And I've done that too. They're like, Holly, can you teach on, something? It's kind of like totally email communication. Sure. And then I'm like, looking around. Well, how do
That's
I?
right.
You become like, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a master of like decades of experience like we're talking about. If you're a step ahead of somebody, sometimes the way you can explain it in the simplest way. If you're decades ahead, sometimes you complicate the heck out of things just because you're not thinking of the simple things anymore, right?
Keep in mind, they call the three of us because they don't know how. And so just the fact that we know how to use the internet already puts us up there at the top of the mountain.
Nice. All right. So Rodney, so those are great tips. Rodney, I know you have amazing tips too on operations. Like you said, you run more than one business too. So please tell us, like, how are you shifting your operations, or how can someone how do they do this? You know what I mean? What do they need to be looking at as a freelancer?
Absolutely. Let me say this in regards to it. I, like Bev, start planning, and I started planning a while back. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why. When I first made the transition from doing I was doing a lot of events in physical locations, but I started migrating more toward the online. And I never forget, I had a really nice month that was supposed to come through, and I'm talking about thousands of dollars that were supposed to come through, and I had stopped diversifying my efforts and was dependent solely on one way of generating revenue. Well, that was toward the end of December, and let's just say the hole fell completely through, that which cost me roughly about $30,000 that I was anticipating that vanish. Okay. Needless to say, I was not a happy camper.
Yeah.
But after that scenario left an impression on me. It said, hey, you can never, ever, ever have everything dependent and have all your eggs in simply one basket. And so with that being said, I started very strategically planning and diversifying the funding streams. And even though I have a main stream, I have diversified funding streams to bring in revenue. And one thing that I would suggest those who are doing freelancing or any type of business, not to have all your eggs in one basket, because to do so is to put yourself in a precarious situation. And I've been there, done that. So now in this whole virtual space now, I set up systems. And what I want to really encourage those that are listening to think of ways and create ways and to create systems that bring in revenue from different streams, okay? And that's going to look different for each of your businesses that you will have. When I was first starting out, again, Bev, one of the books that you had written a while back that helped businesses, that book was helpful because when I first started, I'm like, hey, great, I want to do grant writing, but I saw in that book, hey, what about doing fund development reports for other people? That actually became my very first paid gig outside of the speaking part that I am doing that led eventually to me writing grants. So again, asking yourself what type of ways that you can diversify your service would be one of the things that I would recommend. Another thing, I'll show you this right here. You see this little book right here? I call this right here my goal mine. And so inside of this daily, I like to write at least 10 ideas in this book, okay? At least 10 ideas every day. And the reason I use it is because I don't want to be boxed in to only having one or two ways of making money. I want to be more like Jay-Z said, I got 101 ways to make this money. And so when I use my brain power, as the book says, Think and Grow Rich, as I use my brain power, I'm putting down ideas, and I can't tell you, I don't do every single one of these ideas, but just think about it. In the course of a year, if I put down 10 ideas every day, in the course of a year, 365 days in a year, man, I've got now over 3,000 some ideas that can make me money. And trust me when I tell you, some of those ideas I come to say, wow, this is a good one. I put a little star by it and I come back and immediately address it. And some other ones I come back to later on and start working on ideas. Sometimes I'll take an idea over here and pull that with this one, and it brings about another idea. And that's made me money. And I would encourage you to use the most powerful weapon that you have, which is your mind. Like,
That's
really
right.
use the power of your mind. If you haven't already gotten this book, go get it. It's Think and Grow Rich. It is a classic, and it helps you to start making some of those shifts that you need to make to think in a different way. And that would be the biggest suggestion in a broad way. I would say use the power of the most powerful machine that you have on the face of this earth, which is right between your ears.
That's right. That's right. It really comes back to mindset. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And I love, you know, looking at that and saying, I can do this, and I'm just going to start, you know, I'm going to start brainstorming things. I'm going to put them on paper. They're just not going to be thoughts, right?
Yep.
Because we all know the thoughts will run away. But actually putting them on paper is so important. And just being able to, even if I don't do this, let me just think crazy right now. And I think
you make it a prisoner.
That's right. That's right.
You make it a prisoner by putting it on paper. Can't run.
Can do it. So, I think especially during this time, you know, we're allowed to think a little crazy because there's a lot of unknowns out there. So there's a lot more freedom to come up with these different ideas, right? To really be like, well, how can we change this to work? So there's, in a way, it's allowing us to have a little bit more flexibility. It's moved a lot of our clients online as well. So maybe before COVID, you would say, I would love to do a virtual boardroom training with your nonprofit. And they said, oh, we're just not set up for that. We'll just have you come out, right? But now people have been forced to go online. So it's actually allowed us to operate in more streamlined systems in a way for those of us who are online. Now, of course, you don't always have to be online. One of the questions that I'm really getting to is, how do I meet people? So maybe I'm an aspiring freelancer. I want to become a freelancer, or I'm new to the game, right? And all of a sudden I was doing my network on how to meet my clients in nonprofits, like at conferences, or, you know what I mean? Like out in public. And now I don't have those opportunities right now, and they may not be around for the next year, right? Or some time, we don't know exactly. So how do people new to the game meet people and get clients right now? What would your recommendations be? And either of you can pick this up.
Well, I'll start. When all this happened in November, I only had 8,000 connections on LinkedIn, and I have been working on LinkedIn strategically with foundation directors, corporate giving, with large investment firms like Fidelity, where they have donor-advised funds. I've connected with everybody associated with donor-advised funds, and people around the world who make decisions, not just following them, but connecting with them. Because when I'm working with a client and we can't get through the normal route, I typically am already connected to somebody at that foundation or corporation or agency via LinkedIn. When I had to go into the crunch cycle in November, at the time, I also was sick with symptoms that are very similar to the virus, where I was in bed for 6 weeks. I think a lot of it was the knockdown of losing revenue, and I just thought, you know, okay, new game plan here. I need to go to bed and dream about it. And I took my laptop, and every day for 3 to 4 hours, I added new connections. By January 2nd, I had hit 11,000 connections, and they were all premium. That's how I've been connecting. Every day when I go on LinkedIn, I have at least 20 to 30 messages from people who are decision makers, development officers who are looking for grant writing. And what I do so that I don't get into overload while I'm working on this new course, I refer them out to other people that are grant writing consultants in hopes of helping them build their businesses. And I just do it freely. And I'll say, well, you know, let me refer you to somebody or connect you with someone that can help you. So that's how I've been networking. I left Facebook because it just, to me, wasn't a productive place to promote a business. And that's just my personal opinion. I need to be where people are talking about business, where they're happy, where they're posting things that are inspirational, and not where they're taking pictures of their kids on a skateboard or something. So LinkedIn has been like gold for me. And then a month ago, I changed my profile to be a LinkedIn Open Network member. So I'm just a basic member. I'm not premium. I cut my premium subscription and went to basic, but I still continue to get quality connections. And LinkedIn Open Network means that I will connect with anyone. Anyone can send me an invite, but I can choose once I see their profile as to whether or not I'm going to connect with them or not. So that has really made a huge difference for training, for advising, for doing all this online. Many more people are on LinkedIn now. And so I don't have a goal, but I'm steadily picking up at least 1,000 connections a month right now.
Wow.
Awesome.
That's amazing. And I love that, you know, and we talked about a little bit about how you need to diversify your streams and do different things, but at the same time, you can focus on one platform at a time, right? Maybe you focus on one stream of income at a time as well, until you optimize it, until you build it, then you go on and then you set, you know, you set it and then forget it, right? You know what I mean? And then you move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
To that. So I think that's important on social media too, because it's deciding, well, where are my clients? Where are my potential clients? A lot of them they haven't been going to those conferences, or it's hard to find them at those conferences, right? So on LinkedIn, it's very targeted. You're getting right to them. And like you said, that is a way more professional network than other social media platforms. So, you know, it is a little bit more high level conversations when you're having those. So yeah, that's definitely gold. And that's even pre-COVID, like you said, these were tactics that you're using and you just continued them on. So yeah, so great. So Rodney, what about you? Like, how would people find clients? So we heard LinkedIn might be a great network, especially finding targeted people on LinkedIn. But what are some other ways that people can connect with some potential clients or partners?
Well, I would echo what Bev said in regards to the power of LinkedIn and what you said in regards to the power of LinkedIn. I'll tell you this brief story, and then I'll go back and tell you a little bit more about LinkedIn. When I first was getting started, I was a student that was in grad school transitioning into doing this business, and funds were so tight. I mean, if you looked at my George Washington, you see his face being squeezed to the side, because I was squeezing every little bit out of that dollar. I couldn't afford a website. So I had to get a student membership web page, one page, on the Alliance for Nonprofit Management. They used to have a directory. And I put my little web page up. I always say, start where you're at, you know.
Yes.
And I put my web page up, and somebody found me. There was a program officer for a foundation here in Pasadena that found me there and invited me to come in to meet. That eventually ended up landing me a $25,000 contract to do work and being consulting for the course of the year. It really equated to being a $50,000 contract because they had me for 2 years. And I can't tell you the other things that it spun off into, but it spun off into connecting me with a lot of different nonprofits in our area. I said it to say that was a tool or resource that I spent money on that bought me business. It was something small. It was something really, really small. It is nowhere near as powerful as LinkedIn is.
Yeah.
Okay. Nowhere near as powerful as LinkedIn is. So the most powerful resource right now in today's time for businesses, really, in terms of social media, I would say is LinkedIn, outside of other social medias such as using video-based marketing and things of that nature. I would say LinkedIn is it. And I would say you can do a lot of targeting there. And I would encourage you to take advantage of the things that LinkedIn does for you automatically. Let me give you one or two quick examples. I get notifications every day when it's somebody's birthday or somebody's anniversary. Oftentimes, a lot of people let that slip past them. One of the most powerful things you can do is recognize people. And instead of simply doing that, I say, hey, happy birthday. And not just happy birthday like everybody else does it, get that little message that automatically populates. Not that. I'm talking about taking a message and sending a direct message to that person, even if I don't know that person well. I cannot tell you how many times when I've done that, people come back to me and start asking me about my grant services, about writing grants, even though I'm not really writing a lot of grants these days. I'm doing more of the teaching and the instructing side of things. So that's just one example of taking what you already have and really maximizing it for your advantage and utilizing what you have before you and really seeing the opportunity and the gold mine that's in it versus overlooking it and having a different mindset that's close to the resources that you currently have at your disposal. It's a powerful machine that if you use it to your advantage, I would say that is the absolute best place to start finding people that can possibly become some of your potential clients.
Yes.
I love that. And it's free, you know what I mean? Like you can, like Dr. B said, you can up level and pay for it and stuff like that, but it is a free platform where back in the day, maybe we did have to pay for a web page or a website, and it's still having that is good. But at the same time, you can publish articles on LinkedIn, you can establish a lot of credibility, you know, so there's so many different things that you can do with it. Definitely recommend it. I definitely think YouTube is a good thing as well because it's its own search engine. So you can really link things from LinkedIn on YouTube. And of course, you know, I podcast. So that's one thing that I found that really reaches out, and I have a lot of people that I would never be able to touch. They listen to podcasts and they find me there, right? So I really think it's getting creative and figuring out, do you like to blog? You know, do you like to write articles, or do you like to talk more? Do you like to be on video? And then just trying them out too, and then saying, well, where am I getting people that are following me? You know, which source, and what do I like to use? Right? But maybe once again, using one thing at a time. But the internet is so powerful. People are out there. You can really meet a lot of potential clients and partners, you guys out there, just like you here today, meeting us. So I think it's a really good opportunity to not be afraid as an aspiring freelancer right now, to really, you can start getting clients. As you've heard throughout this call, and I'm just going to get over to the comments, some of the questions here soon, is also, you know, nonprofits need you, right? Unfortunately, you know, a lot of nonprofits may dissolve during this time, right? They may not have the resources to continue to move forward. They didn't have that strategic planning in place. You know what I mean? They didn't have things set up. They didn't diversify their own funding streams. They may have been relying on a program that may no longer exist, right? So it's really saying, how can we help those nonprofits not dissolve? How can we help those nonprofits get set up? And you guys are, you know, out there learning how to write grants, learning how to do different funding for nonprofits. And we really encourage you to keep doing that. And of course, you can contact any of us for resources. We all have our different courses, and we have, some of us have books, and we have different things available. So before I get into your questions real quick, also, do you guys have any specific products right now or services that can be helpful for the people on the call? Either one of you, sorry.
Well, I have strategic planning. I could do that virtually as well as in person once the quarantine lifts. Compression planning. I've taken compression planning training, and that is strategic planning on steroids. I also have a board of directors boot camp, as well as training for a board when they're micromanaging the executive director of an organization. And now that I'm involved with AFP, because that's where development officers have membership, they make decisions. They hire
The Association of Professionals?
Yes, exactly. Those are where people are making decisions, and they need grant writers all the time, even if for a period of time, not forever. So it's a good place to be because there's no other grant writers at my chapter, literally. Everybody is in a position of hiring or referring. So that's been a big opener for me. So I would just say, think outside the box. Assess yourself. What are the skills that you can do? What do you want to do that you don't have the skill set for? I take some type of an intense professional development training from other people and institutions every single year. I'm going to be 72 this year, and my dream is to go back to Disney Institute to learn more about Walt Disney's innovation vision so that I can understand more how to incorporate that philosophy and methodology into the way I think and what I do, so we never stop learning.
That's right. I love that. I love that. So yeah, so that's definitely awesome tips. And Rodney, what about you? What do you got?
Well, I have a lot of different resources. It really depends on what a person is trying to do. I would say it's a grant writer, grant professional. I would say probably some resources that a lot of my students have found probably the most helpful during these times is the opportunity for us to have that one-on-one engagement or group engagement to do kind of like what we're doing right now, to learn strategies to be more successful in their marketing, more successful in their business. And for those that are just starting out with grant writing, to be able to go deeper in being able to do a more effective job with that. So if they're interested in checking out that, there's a number of other resources over at grantcentralusa.com. Look in the store. But again, I like to find out, what does a person need? Because we got a lot of different things, and I would be able to say, hey, we got this and that, but it really depends on what a person is really trying to do that can really service them the best. So I would say, hey, go take a peek out over there. If it's something that catches your eye that maybe addresses a need, feel free to reach out to us.
Awesome. Awesome. And we do have all of the links in the chat group. So if you guys are on the chat group, I'm going to go ahead and I have some questions in here. And thank you, Becky. We have Becky on the call. She's been putting stuff in the chat group for you guys. Let's see, Becky, here we go. I got one from Tammy Gibbs. She's in one of my groups. So awesome. Thanks, Tammy, for being on the call. How does Dr. Bev find wedding clients?
Basically via LinkedIn and telling everybody that I know in my friend group across the country that I now have this credential and that I can conduct weddings, because a lot of people don't have the option of postponing their wedding for whatever reason. I won't give you all the reasons, but you pretty much can imagine some people need to be married at a certain time and can't wait until the pandemic is over. So with that, it's pretty easy to attract them. And I don't do like one every day or anything like that, but it's nice. It's nice to be able to do something to help people get started in their life and to do it in such a way that it meets their needs. So yeah, it's not hard at all. And then there is a group that actually does what I do, I mean, all over the world. So they connect on Facebook, and I'm not a member anymore. I know enough people in the group that I can say, hey, I got my paperwork, I've talked to the county clerk's office, I'm cleared to go. You know, keep me in mind if anybody in the Phoenix area needs a quickie wedding.
I love it.
Bev, you're the only person I know that can help get somebody married and get them funded and get their board straightened out in the same day. You're an awesome lady. You're awesome. You be having fun.
What do you need? Really, thinking out of the box. You actually got about that, how awesome it is. Here's another question from Mary. What have you taken away from some of your failures and not getting a grant for a client, if any? That's a good one. Good question. So Rodney, did you want to answer that?
Be happy to. The best answer that I can say with that is, when you get a failure, it's not to take it so personal. It's almost like, okay, hold on. It's like dust on your shoulders. Like, okay, you wrote a grant, you didn't get funded. There are a number of reasons why you might not have gotten funded. The big thing with failure is I'm trying to make failure my best friend. And by best friend, I'm like, hey, come over here, let's talk. And allowing failure to tell me what I need to do maybe different the next time so that I can use it to my advantage. That may be connecting with the funder if they're open to it, and allow them to share some insight that maybe can not convince them to fund you, but to be able to allow them to share some insight that may help you for future grant proposals. So again, long story short, bringing failure in and hugging it, give it a hug, it's your friend. And don't view it as you're bad. When you view it as you're bad in every failure, then that's the wrong way to look at it. I would say, look at it from the standpoint, I got a little dust on my shoulder, let me dust it off and let me regroup and let me move on so that I can grow. Because if you're not failing, you're not really learning, you're not growing.
Right.
We learn by falling down and getting back up. So I would say, get up and keep on going.
I love that. I love that, because it's difficult, especially at some different parts in your time throughout your journey. You're going to fail. You're going to get, especially as a grant writer, you're not going to get them 100% funded, and you're going to take it personally at first. You will, so to remember, wait a second, it's not me they're rejecting. It's, you know what I mean? It's something in how it was written. Maybe it didn't meet their priorities, but I think that's important, Rodney, like you're saying, to try to follow up. I always try to follow up with the funder. I always follow up with the funder, right? And say, hey, you know, can you give us some feedback on why this didn't get funded? Because that feedback is gold. It is gold, right? And that can really, the federal government does a pretty good job because of how they review grants to give you funding or to give you feedback. And it can really, really help. And the other thing too, is I try to get, you know, then it's the conversation with the client. So maybe you get over yourself, right? But then it's also like your client might not have that positive mindset or failure as a friend. How do you communicate with them? So it's also, I think, learning how before you go into the process with your client, setting up the realistic expectations from the beginning can really hamper a lot of that ickiness, you know, that might come over when they don't all get funded, because they won't. So really letting them know from the beginning that how competitive a grant is and that sort of thing is really important as well. And that you're also creating a product. So even if it doesn't get funded, they can use a lot of the write-up on their website. They can use it for a crowdfunding campaign. They can use it in different ways. It doesn't mean the whole thing was a waste of money, right? Because that's a thing you might think, well, they just think it's a waste of money. They hired me now. No, that's not true. You are doing them a service still as a product. Dr. B, do you want to lend to that? Because I think this is a really important question.
Yeah, I just want to say that up front, I tell my client that we don't use the word guarantee. We will try our best. But I also have a pre-screening process where I won't write it if I know it won't get funded. So an example, a federal grant competition where only 3 are going to be awarded. And the client is tossing their hat out there in the federal arena for the first time. They're optimistic, they're excited, they think they're going to have a chance. But I do a lot of discovery, and it relates to politics, who's in charge at the state level, who's in charge at the federal level, is it a match? Where did this money go every year for the last 5 years? If this is a discretionary grant that is funded by Congress every single year, and then what kind of agencies receive those grants? What do they look like in size and stature compared to my client? And then I also look at my client's ability. So I've created a go, no go assessment, and I live by that assessment. If I go through and ask them all the questions and assign points to the responses and they don't get to a certain point where it's a go, I just say, I'm advising that we not go after this. This is why you won't get it. This is my discovery report. It's 7 pages to tell you why you should not be investing time and effort into this. You hired me as your expert and as your consultant, and I'm telling you, this is a waste of labor for everybody around the table. We can't do it. And a lot of times I have to turn down contracts if I know before I even start writing it, they don't have a chance of getting funded. My name is all I have. It's my brand. And I can't be taking thousands of dollars for something that I know they don't have a chance of winning, because they're going to be angry. They're going to tell everybody. They're going to ravish my name with negative comments, and I'll never get that client back for any future work. They'll always have a bad taste. I can't afford to do that. So I'd rather have them be angry that I won't write it than angry that I did write it and it didn't get funded and I didn't warn them up front.
Right. Oh, that's fantastic. I love that method. Right, so we have some more questions, and just to let you guys know, we are at a little over an hour. We're going to go ahead and extend this for 75 minutes, so for 10 more minutes, if that's okay for everyone, to stay on, because we do have some more questions coming in. Is that okay with you two? And I can answer both.
I'm good.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, 10 more minutes in your time. All right, so we do have some more questions coming in. Let's go ahead. What grant funding certification body would you recommend for an aspiring grant writer? And this is a question I hear quite a bit. Dr. B, did you want to start this time on any recommendations that you have?
Grant Professionals Association and preparing to take the certification examination. I was a member for 17 years. And while I don't possess a GPC, because when it first came out, I was already well established in client overload, so I didn't need it then. But I would recommend definitely Grant Professional Certification exam process to become a GPC. I've seen the other competitive organization out there, and let's just say I'm not impressed.
Okay. Okay. And that's, and I know, like you said, like sometimes you don't necessarily need to have a certificate. And that's what a lot of people, they think, oh, it's just the thing you need to have. And how I always say to them too, there's different things out there and you're going to learn from it. And that's fantastic. But at the same time, it's not like you have to have something if you've been doing it for a long time and writing grants, right? It's just, it's a good thing to kind of add. It's complementary. But at the same time, there's, you know, sometimes organizations are set up for certificates just to, you know, there's different things, right? Like, what does it really mean? Your clients aren't going to come to you saying, what certifications do you have? They're going to say, what grants have you written? How many have you had funded? You know what I mean? So that's what I say. Don't like go down the rabbit hole thinking, I need to do this first and then spend, you know, whatever. You can, and there's definitely good ones out there. And I know, Rodney, you also have a fantastic certification process as well. So GPA is one of the big fish, but you also have a big one too. So can you kind of talk about what your recommendations are as far as certification?
So I think my first recommendation is to ask the person, like, really, what is the purpose, and to really clarify what the purpose is. I've done like 4 or 5 videos that kind of talk about this on YouTube in terms of certification. So check that out. But the long and short of it, I always like to start back with the purpose. And if you're solid with the purpose of what you're trying to aim for, I think that really will direct you in the path of what will be the best for you. Because again, I'm a big component, a big believer that there's no kind of one size that fits all. But if you determine what you really need and what the purpose is for what you're getting a certification for, then you can see what's in best alignment to help you accomplish that goal. And if it's just a, hey, I'm gonna get a certification, bam, just because so I can be recognized, then okay. But if it's a certification for you to be able to maybe get a promotion, or if it's a certification for you to be able to get advancement within your career, and your organization has a preference, then that can also direct you. So there's a lot of different factors that kind of go into it. I would say, kind of look at that and see what works best for you in that regard. And again, I have certifications pieces that are set, and I've gone and gotten certifications. But again, at the end of the day, it kind of goes back to what's the general purpose that you're trying to achieve with the certification. So that's what I would see.
And I love that, because I think there are certain fields of expertise, right, in consulting that you are required to have a certification, like with real estate or something like that, where you have to take it. So I think when people come in, and that's why we get the questions so much, is because they think it's a requirement in the field, and it's not, okay? So like it is. So it goes back to learning how to write grants, and actually writing them is one of the most powerful things that you can do. So let's just keep going down. Hi, Dr. Bev. Could you please speak a little bit more about your nonprofit board of directors bootcamp workshops? How did you start the project, and is the course available on your website?
I started the process when I was writing grant applications for so many smaller nonprofits, and I saw how dysfunctional, I guess is the best word, their boards were. The boards didn't know anybody in the community. They didn't know anybody at the foundations that were like local. They didn't know any of the corporate givers. They didn't help bring money in. Their board meetings were more like potlucks, and it was just sort of disorganized. Even when I went to board meetings when they were going to approve my contract, there was so much chatter that no actions took place until the beginning of the second hour. And I was like, this has got to stop. Way too much here. So I started studying Robert's Rules of Order and looking to see what the nonprofit council had, and board source and everything else, and bringing myself up to speed on what's being recommended, what works, what doesn't work, why do executive directors leave their job, why is there such a high turnover in the nonprofit sector, why are board members not doing what they're supposed to do, why is there a board member on 20 boards, what do they have time to do for any one organization? And I just created a curriculum and started doing the grant writing boot camp. And I started out with faith-based organizations, church boards that had created community nonprofits to do outreach. And once I got my, strength and confidence under me, I started expanding to larger nonprofits as well and doing that board training. So no, up until now, it hasn't been offered online. But yes, now it is available online, and it's not a canned curriculum. I do an organizational assessment prior to determining what the training needs to be. And then I create the training outline and share it with the executive director as well as the board, and let them add something if they want to. And then all of that is brand new when they get it. It's never the same.
Nice. Okay, that's great. And that's once again going out and learning what you can and then formulating something. So that's awesome. And then we have another question from Nicolette. I seem to be frequently caught between not having enough income when my client level is down to being overwhelmed with too many people at once for one person when I ramp up outreach. But this doesn't happen consistently enough for me to hire anybody. How have some of you balanced that? Excellent question. Rodney, did you want to talk about this one a little bit?
Yeah, well, I would say the first thing is I'm a big fan of not being the Lone Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we take the Lone Ranger approach of simply doing things by ourselves, we don't maximize and leverage our time in the most effective way. So I'm a big fan of always, even if you're a solo entrepreneur right now, developing a team and taking a team approach. And by taking a team approach, there are a number of different ways you can do that, even if you're just starting out. For instance, one of the things that I've done, I still do, and I did early on when I was starting my business, is I started incorporating interns that needed to get experience. Some from the collegiate standpoint, they had to get internships to fulfill their graduation requirements. And then also being able to leverage people that were interested in learning and growing in this career and bringing them alongside and creating ways for them to contribute while also investing back into them. So that's a great way when you start leveraging other people's time and energy and pouring into them, but also being able to benefit from them as well. So that's one thing I would suggest doing. And the other thing I would say is you want to develop a team early on of other people that you can form alliances with. So if you find yourself in a situation where you have maybe too much of a load and there's someone else who doesn't have that type of demand right now, maybe you can develop some type of partnership and alliance where they do the work underneath you when the time is needed, and then vice versa, you kind of share in that type of relationship. So it allows you to not necessarily have to go in and feel like, okay, wow, who am I going to call on? You've already thought in advance, and this is about being proactive and looking at the areas that you may have holes in right now to strengthen right now before that need comes about. So that's one thing I would suggest.
That's awesome. And I like that you say, do it, yeah, in that downtime, like develop those relationships. That's so important. Okay, and then we have another question from Brittany. What advice do you have for someone just starting in the grant world? One grant written. How do you show your worth for potential jobs with little to no experience? Dr. Bev, did you want to comment on that?
Yes, thank you for asking me too. I'm just finishing up week 16 tomorrow morning of my online coaching mentoring class. And these are people who are learning grant writing and that are already solid consultants with CFREs and grant writing clients in the past, but they need to expand their business. And so I've been working with them for the last 16 weeks for just an hour on Saturday to coach them how to use what experience they have and maximize it. And I'll just give this one example. I have a student and he's never written grants before outside of taking my classes online and being a member of my coaching class. A client approached me on LinkedIn, a potential client, and asked me to do their grant writing. And I didn't mention this before when I said I'm personally not doing any grant writing, but I have a database of 80 subcontractors that are my go-tos where I make the overhead on their work. That's another source of passive revenue. But I also have to monitor, track, and be on conference calls as well with my client and the grant writer. But this person, my student, he just got his first contract this past week with that client, and it's a 1-year retainer contract.
Wow.
So, and he has the only experience is taking my classes, taking my coaching, and I'm going to be there in the background as his mentor, even though the course is over tomorrow, for the duration. For as long as any of my students need me, I will refer clients to them so they can gain experience. I will guide them in their contracts, what to charge in their rates because they have no experience. And I'll make sure that they turn out stellar work that actually gets funded. So there is a way to do things, but it is about, like Rodney said, multiple revenue streams, having other people do the work. I don't want to be busy all day. I don't want to sit in this chair for longer than after 4 hours. I'm upset if I miss seeing the view. So I let other people do their work and their expertise, and I trust them because I know them all. They're all they're current members of the same association I belong to. I know I can trust them, and it's just a good feeling to be at this point.
Right, right. And then did you also want to lend to that, Rodney? Because I think that's a really important question that I get quite a bit is,
Yeah.
You know, how do I'm starting off, I have no experience. How am I getting clients to hire me? So one way is you could partner with other more like more known grant writers that have potential clients coming in and get kind of referrals, you know, but how else can you do that?
That's a great question. And I would say, the first thing that I would do, and what I did when I was first starting out, I leveraged the experience of someone that was already well established in the industry. And at the time, it happened to be my professor, and he already had raised a few $1 million. And what I did was I had zero experience and was just starting out. So I leaned on his credibility. And instead of me just coming to the forefront as this person who had zero experience, I now come to the table with him in a kind of partnership kind of way where I'm able to leverage his history and merge it with mine. And so now, if as need be, I was able to leverage that, okay? We didn't have like an official documented legal partnership, but I was leveraging his experience and his knowledge and some of his brain. And that was one way that I was able to do it initially. The other thing that I would say, speaking to this though, your value, being someone new, the first person that you're gonna have to convince about the work is not out there.
That's right.
It's really in here.
It's yourself.
So I would really say, and I know, and this may sound real simple, but trust me when I say the first person you got to go to work on this is with yourself.
Yeah.
You got to go to work on yourself to begin to see your value and what you're bringing to the table. And here's what you can do real simple. You're going to write a proposal for this organization that has the potential of bringing hundreds of thousands of dollars in, and in some cases, millions of dollars in, okay? So you start seeing your worth in not what has already been done, but start first looking at the potential of what your work can possibly lead to, and start seeing it in advance before seeing it in the future, which means you've got to go to work on yourself and start believing more in your abilities to deliver. And even if you don't get funded initially, okay, because again, we say you will get some rejections. That's a part of the equation. But really saying, okay, great. It's about knowing your worth and knowing your value. So I would say really go to work first there and continue to build that while you're also doing these other things as well.
I love that. And just to kind of add to that.
Great.
Yeah, I know, right? It's fantastic. But to add to that too is knowing, like you said, you first have to build up yourself and convince yourself, because if you don't think you can do it, you're not going to be able to convince anyone else that you can do it. And then you're gonna be like, what's wrong with me? And that's a terrible spiral to be in, right? So I do recommend sometimes also, you know, volunteer, go out there and volunteer for, you know, 3 to 6 months, write some grants, get some experience, you know, maybe win some grants even through the process. And then you're also going to develop that confidence and then go out there and start building. And I know people don't want to hear that and volunteer at first, but I think, you know, sometimes that is something you can really do, even if you're like, I can serve on a board or something, and just do the training for that single board, even while I'm getting, you know, experience and building myself up. And that's going to be really helpful. Yeah, so that could be another recommendation too, or in addition to finding somebody that you can collaborate with. Yeah, so we have some more questions here. I know we're running short on time here, but I do want to go through some of these questions. Let's see, when coming, or can you suggest some grant writing platforms for grant funding opportunities? So where do you guys like to do your research for finding grants? I know grants.gov is a federal one, so definitely check that out. But are there some other places that you guys kind of go to?
I use the foundation directory online. I just resubscribed to GrantStation, and I'm based in Arizona, so we have our own state directory. It's called azgrants.com. I use that as well. But I also spend a lot of time on Google because not everything is in a directory. You have to look for the needles that fell through the haystack in order to really find the good funders or even corporate donors who typically don't have a foundation but will give if you ask them.
Right. So really doing the research and finding, yeah, looking online, I find that even local city websites will have a lot of opportunities out there that are a really good match because it's in your city or in your area that, you know, aren't published other places. Sometimes they publish in the newspaper. I always say kind of go old school to the newspaper sometimes because they have to publish through there. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's a great place too. I also really like Instrumental for grant research. It's kind of a newer platform, but I find it very user-friendly. And what I like about that is you don't just put in what the need is, you know what I mean, for that specific nonprofit. You put in the need for the different specific projects that the nonprofit's looking at getting funding, and then they'll send you emails with all of the funding sources listed there. So I find that is a really innovative tool. Yeah, so that's kind of what I learned. What about you, Rodney? Where do you find grants?
I don't have too much more to add than what's already been said. I will say this though, and this is something that I would really strongly recommend. With the sources that have just been mentioned, which are excellent sources, instead of doing a search like this, try doing some searches like this that go deep, okay?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes the jewels are not just in doing surface research. The jewels and the treasures are when you start going deeper and when you start unearthing opportunities that you maybe didn't know that was really there, but because you started searching and searching and searching, you come up against a jewel that you didn't know was there. Let me give you one example. And I'm a big fan of reaching out and developing relationships with the funder. So I don't suggest applying without calling, ever, always.
That's right.
And with that being the case, I never forget having one conversation with the entry person. This was not the funder, just the entry person. And he turned me on to an incredible resource that I had no. He said, Rodney, we have some, I know many people know about our front doors are getting funded, but we also have back doors and side doors. I was like, what? We got back doors and side doors? Tell me more. Tell me more. And he got me talking. And as he started telling me more, he says, well, we fund these other areas. Sometimes we'll buy tables for various events, but also our funders. This was a large foundation. It's actually the California Endowment Foundation. And the board members all had a portfolio of about $200,000 each that they could contribute to fund whatever they want to fund.
Wow.
And so he turned me on to that information. He also said most of them don't spend all the money at the end of the year and it does not carry over to the next year. So then after he told me that, I'm like, okay, well, I feel like it's my fiduciary responsibility to help make sure that they got rid of all that money every year. And so that was something that now I'm digging deeper. And eventually we started sending grant proposals to some of those funders, the board members' home, okay? Some of their homes and some of their workplaces. So again, it wasn't going this way surfaced trying to find meaning. It was with the few that I had going deeper, which allowed me to unearth some jewels. So that's what I would recommend in terms of those funding sources, to dig deep.
And I love that, because it goes back to, and this is what I always say too, it's those, sorry, there's laughing behind my daughters. Our kids are home. So yes, she's having a fun time doing something. So anyways, but going back to that, as far as funding sources, aren't they and us, right? The you and me kind of thing, right? It's more about partnerships. So I always say, and I love that you gave that example, because it's not about just like trying to find these places online that seem kind of abstract and then submitting applications. It's about building a relationship. So it's really about, you know, finding more out about them. And I think this also links back in and ties into what Dr. Beverly was saying about, you know, what she's doing on LinkedIn right now, is finding strategic contacts. And those are different ways you can build relationships up really well through contacting those individuals on LinkedIn and saying, hey, you know, this is the nonprofit we're talking about, you know, these are different things we do, and we see what you're doing. Is there any, you know, kind of way that we can work together? So really forming partnerships. And I even say, you know, don't just submit an application once a year, invite them to things that you're doing.
Yes.
And even if that's online right now, invite them. Don't look at them, if someone just came to me asking me for money once a year, that's not a relationship to me. You know what I mean? So think of it that way. How can I form a relationship, right? How can I put things out there that they may need too? And I think this kind of pivots back into this COVID-19 area. We're actually seeing a lot of foundations, a lot of funding sources, even federal ones, reaching out to nonprofits at this point in time. I'm seeing more of that than I've seen at any other time, because they're saying, we want to make sure that you're supported, apply for this grant. So there is a lot of that going on right now. So those are the relationships that you want to develop right now. You can be really reaching out. And even as a freelance grant writer, this was a great tip that somebody had recommended. And they said, you know what you can do right now is contact even those foundations, contact those different agencies that give out money, those cities and everything, and say, hey, I'm a grant writer. I help different nonprofits. Is there anyone that I can help support, right? Do you want me to reach out to one of those too? Do you want me to write a grant on their one's behalf right now that you really want to get funding in the hands of, but you know they don't have that capacity? How can I help? So maybe you're actually having the foundation pay for your services right now. So it can be thinking out of the box, right? So this is the time for you all to out of the box, get out there, try new things. We do have some more questions, but we are at the end of our time. We've already gone over.
Can I say this one idea? I got something I want to share. I think that somebody may benefit from. You have right now so many people at home. Okay, so you've got to think differently. The mail is not going to their organizations.
Right.
So the wise, savvy nonprofit leader, if you're going to send information, you need to find where are these executive directors, what are their home addresses? You can locate the information. It's not too hard. And the average person in the United States only receives every 2 months is when they receive personal communication that comes to their home. Okay. So we're talking about in the course of a year, only about 6 times in the course of a year. What if you were that person that was savvy enough to draft a letter that could be sent to the executive director's home, letting them know, hey, I know this is challenging times, but I know you may already have a grant writer that's already doing this for you, but just in case you don't, just know that here I am and my services are here to help you. How can I help you? Okay. What happens when they receive something like that and it's been sent to the home? I'll tell you, you start sticking out and you start being in demand because you're doing what the other 80 to 90% are not doing. So again, this gets back down to your mindset, and this really gets back down to thinking out of the box, using that powerful machine you have up here to come up with new creative ideas. And that's what I think that's why I think this time presents unparalleled opportunity. Unparalleled opportunity. And either this is a great time for those who are cut out for it. And here, note that I've said those who are cut out for it, because I'll be honest with you, I don't believe everybody's cut out to be a business owner. And I'll be the first to say it.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Because this will chew you up and spit you out, which means you got to get tough up here mentally and emotionally to deal with rejection. But if you will do so, and if you will strengthen yourself, and if you will grow and get tougher, and when the situations hit you, not allow it to destroy you, and then you start thinking with a sense of desperation, like, hey, I got to make this brain come up with some ideas. Your brain will come up with those ideas. You're smarter than you actually realize, and use that to your advantage and start doing things that others are not doing. And guess what? There's enough room out here for you to get a market.
Yes.
If
we're all out here
you
going,
be
hey,
correct.
join us. Right?
Exactly.
That's right.
Come. We don't have it all. It's a lot more opportunity out here. You got to create your opportunity to be your own miracle.
Yes.
Yep. And like I tell people, like, people need you guys right now. They need you to step up and help them get funding and to help them come up with strategies. Maybe you're like, well, maybe I don't want to just do grant writing. You don't have to. And we actually encourage you not to just do grant writing, even as a freelance grant writer. Diversify your streams of income. And a lot of times you're like, well, what else do I do? When you start talking to your potential clients and your clients, they're going to give you new services because they're going to say, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do that? And you're just going to see, oh, they need some clarity on this type of operation or the system, or they need help with this. And then you're going to learn it. And that's going to be something new to add to your toolbox. So I just think, so just be positive. There's a lot out there right now. Definitely, Dr. B, I also want to give you some final remark time before we close out. And just to let you all know that this is being recorded, and I will release it on Grant Writing and Funding podcast and email all of you guys. So please do look for the follow-up emails. And for those questions that we have not been able to get to today, what I'm going to do, if it's okay with Rodney and Dr. B, is I'm going to email them to you and then have you be able to respond to them in email, and then I can send out the email to all of the participants on the call.
Okay.
Does that sound like a good thing?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So we'll do that. So definitely, if you did not get your question answered today, we had so many questions coming in, but we will definitely reply to those questions and get you that information. We can also look at hosting another event like this so we can get more questions answered. So please let us know, you guys, what you would like us, or what would you like to see? All right, Dr. B, so before we close it out, can you also give some final remarks, as Rodney Walker so eloquently put as well?
Well, I like the fact that Rodney brought up writing down your ideas and your goals. And so I do that every year at the end of December. I forecast the business things that I expect to do, the training places. So training doesn't happen randomly. Training happens because I make a list of places I want to go, I want to see, I want to be there. And so that kind of sets the platform for how do I make this happen. So have goals, have them written down, look at them frequently. Also have, as Rodney said, you have to have confidence in yourself. A lot of other grant writers, when I was getting started, thought I was crazy because you can't make a living writing grants full time. That's what they told me. You're crazy to leave your job. You can never survive out there. Don't you think we'd be doing this already if you could, just go out and find clients and replace your salary? I didn't listen to those people. I stopped going to their networking meetings. And, and it's just like, okay, I don't care what you say. This is what I'm going to do.
Yes.
And I have had no training. I'm just going to do it because I know this is what I was meant to do. Be tenacious and have no limits. Don't ever pause when a potential client says to you, we're looking for a consultant to do this. Even if you're there as the grant writing person, don't pause. Just say, oh, I guess we never talked about it. I can do that. And then I'm thinking, oh my God, 40 hours of research on the internet in order to figure out how to do it. But when I stand up in front of this group, they're going to think I'm the expert, that I've been doing this for years. And I'm going to have all kind of bells and whistles. You don't just educate, you edutain in the world of grant training, because people people in any kind of training, board training, nonprofit training, corporate training, you give information, but you give it in an entertaining way. So step outside your regular box and don't ever go back in there, because if you go back in that box, you will not survive as a self-employed entrepreneur. You'll go back to your day job. If I had to go to a day job right now, I would choke myself.
I love that though too. It's you know, really watch who you're surrounding yourself with. And unfortunately, I see this a lot, is some of the closest people to you may kind of bring up your biggest fears. Like, oh,
Yeah.
about that full-time job that gives you benefits, and you know, maybe you shouldn't take that risk. And it's because they love you and they're just scared for you, and you just say, okay, thank you. And you surround yourself with people that are like in this group for your leverage, you know what I mean? So you can sit there and you can say, wait, I know they love me and I know they have the best intentions, but I'm not getting good messaging from that right now, and I need to surround myself with other people who are doing it, who can push me, who can support me mentally in this, because it is very different and out of the box than a lot of people think. So I love that you brought that up, because it's really important to surround yourself with a good network that thinks differently, because we do, as entrepreneurs, we think a little differently. And and I love what you said about you said, I have to do this though. You followed your intuition. So knowing what that intuition is. Yeah, and so thank you. So Rodney, did you want to add one last thing? Sorry, I just want to make sure that you had your final closing remarks.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you again. Thank you again for having this, Holly. It's been a pleasure being with you guys. And also, thank you, Bev, for all that you've done and all that you continue to do. And I'm a big fan of your work, and both your work and the things that you guys have done. I would say right now, these are some changing times. And one book that I read and reread, and I continue to reread, and I read it today again, and that's the book, Who Moved My Cheese? I think it's a very powerful book, especially for now. And I would encourage those of you who haven't read it to go read that wonderful book. You can get it on Audible, absolutely, and listen to it in less than like an hour or two. I would really suggest doing that, because that book had a profound impact on my life, and I believe it will have a profound impact on your life, for you to see, hey, where are you right now in terms of the different characters that are made mention, and then what do you need to do different, because change is going to continue to happen. It's not going to lessen. With our time in our society these days, there's even more change happening more rapidly. And so when you get the mindset that they have there, I think it really helps and can help you to forge forward in a very confident and powerful way. So thank you again for having me, and I really enjoyed my time with you guys today.
Yes, and thank you both for coming on, and thank you for all of our attendees today. Like, I mean, I would lie if I say we wouldn't do this without you, because I totally would just like ask Dr. B and Rodney a million questions myself, but I totally help just like, we know that, you know, you want to hear this too. Like as I'm like talking and moderating this panel, I am taking notes as well. So yeah, so I hope all of you have too. This has been so powerful for me, and I'm just so excited that we had so many people on the call, so many questions. Like I said, I just saved the chat box. We will definitely answer your questions and get back to you. We also had a lot of people say, yes, please do another panel. So I'll sort out schedules. Maybe we can do that again, especially as things kind of open up in the economy a little bit more, and we can kind of have a different pulse on what's happening in a few weeks. That might be really helpful for all of you. And the other thing, of course, is I'll be sending out an email. So please do check your email so you can get all of the different information from today, all the questions answered. And we'll also send the different links of the different things that we talked about today, where you can find Rodney, where you can find Dr. B, where you can find myself. And I'll also have this recorded, as I'm actually thinking to put this into 2 podcasts.